There's loads of hidden secrets and Easter eggs in Far Cry 6, and I'm going to take you through 20 of them, which I think are good fun and definitely worth checking out. There is also a few spoilers from multiple different games in this video, by the way, so just a heads up and let's swan dive in. And speaking of diving in, let's start off with our first Easter egg being an Assassin's Creed reference, which is located on the tutorial island where I am on the map right now. And when you do get there, you're going to come across this lonely tower, and if you actually climb to the top, you're going to clock this plank, which is kind of almost inviting you to jump out through the archway. And if you do end up jumping, you're going to hear this eagle call, and then also noticed hay bales at the bottom of the tower. And this is a clear reference to Assassin's Creed games where you kind of jump from outrageous heights into hay and then somehow come out unscathed. So it looks like the developers have had some fun here because the hay doesn't actually break our fall and we have to get rezzed by a local NPC. So we've been bamboozled here, and I for one am a big fan of it. Now sticking on Assassin's Creed Easter eggs a little while longer, because if we actually head to the region of Madrugada, specifically east of Oasis Plains, we're going to come across a treasure hunt called Cash Money, which states that Bunker 2 is actually off limits, and of course we want to get inside Bunker 2. So if you actually head to the left hand side of the building, climb up the ladder, remove the engineer and then press the switch, the bunker doors are going to open briefly, and this is when you want to ping a bullet to get the oil barrels to explode. And after we do that, we can then get ourselves inside, and once you head down the actual corridor, you're going to come across this note on the table which actually lists items that are due to go to auction. The first one on the list is an ancient spear, broken and repaired multiple times, and this is reference to King Leonidas' spear from Assassin's Creed Odyssey, which is used by Cassandra or Alexios, depending upon who you played with. And our second item to go to auction is a Chinese knife, which features silver dragon iconography, and this is actually a nod to the knife used by Jason Brody in Far Cry 3. And our third item is actually the urn, which contains the ashes of Far Cry 4's protagonist AJ Garley's mother, with our final item off the auction being a pair of ancient concealed blades, which is another nod to Assassin's Creed's hidden blades that can actually be extended and retracted from the wrist gauntlet to assassinate enemies. So pretty cool small details there and very easily missed. Now speaking of small details, because there's several more references to more Ubisoft games in the vehicle customization menu, specifically the dashboard section, where you'll come across a variety of different bobbleheads that you can pop inside your vehicle, which you may find familiar. For example, you've got the Nox Chibi, which is reference to Good and Evil 2, which is currently being developed by Ubisoft at the moment, as well as Edward Kenway, one of the protagonists for AC Black Flag, and Bayek, who is another protagonist from Assassin's Creed Origins. So there is a lot more in that menu, just like Agent Fisher from Splinter Cell and the Conqueror bobblehead from For Honor, so definitely go check it out and see if there's one that you recognise. Now there is actually an achievement in game called the Jawson Brody Trophy, and you'll actually obtain it for killing a shark with some sort of explosion. And I reckon there's a couple Easter eggs for the price of one here, because of course Jason Brody was first seen punching a shark in Far Cry 3, and him being the protagonist, this is what this kind of achievement is named after. But also in the film Jaws, there is a Chief Brody who actually shoots a pressurized scuba tank in Jaws' mouth, causing it to explode. So I think it all adds up together here. And if you're actually interested in getting this achievement, by the way, quickly, I found this place on the map to be the easiest place to get it. You just need a rocket launcher, which is what I found works best, but grenades will do the job just as well. Now another great find in this game is actually unlocking Boom Boom in the shipping container in Balasares after completing the Yaron story called Boom or Bust. Now this amigo may ring a few bells and look very familiar because it's a clear nod to Far Cry 5 as you actually unlock Boomer during your playthrough there. Incidentally, a note inside the container does say that an American by the name of Herc paid them to ship the container with the dog inside, hoping to give Boomer a better life. This is of course another reference to Herc, who has appeared in 5 Far Cry games but not the latest one, so I think this is their kind of way of including him in Far Cry 6. A cool heads up here, by the way, is that Boomer, or Boom Boom, actually jumps in the vehicles when you get inside if you've actually got him as an amigo out and about with you. I love that small detail. He sticks his head out the window as well, which is cool. And to actually get hold of him, the storyline doesn't take too long. You just need to head to Mantaz's in the Val d'Oro and walk up to the Yaron storyline note in the middle of the camp. It actually took me about 10 minutes or so to get, so it doesn't take long. Very good news. Now more good news, depending upon if you actually like this film or not, but we've got reference to Jurassic Park here, which is actually known as Mesozoic Park in-game. It's a special operation that you can actually play solo or co-op at Lola in any one of your guerrilla camps throughout the game. And what stands out here isn't the actual model dinosaurs, but the iconic Jurassic Park gate at the entrance, which is completely awesome. I actually used to love this film as a kid, and still do, to be honest with you. But not only that, as soon as you actually go through the gates and take a slight left, you can press a button, which provides you with some Mesozoic Park intro spiel, but at the end of it, you're left with this iconic line which states,
"Welcome to Mesozoic Park,"
which is actually referenced to the same line said by Jurassic Park owner John Hammond, which is a lovely detail.
Welcome to Jurassic Park.
Now, dinosaurs to one side, early on in the game you'll actually come across a quest where you'll be tasked with burning the fields of the tobacco plant Vivero. If you played the game you may recall this one because you get some awesome music playing in the background which kind of adds to the atmosphere, but after you complete this quest, Dani will mention that burning these plants with a flamethrower actually felt familiar. In fact, you can hear her say it here.
Burning shit with a flamethrower. Felt familiar.
And it should feel familiar because in Far Cry 3 you actually burn all of Vars's weed farms with music also playing in the background. So another small detail there, but it's also right in our faces, which is pretty fun. Now, one of the most obscure secrets hidden in the game is a ghost which you'll actually come across on the east coast of El Este at the Santo Amaro Cemetery. In the main mausoleum in the middle of the graveyard, you'll read a note from a local which questions whether this graveyard is actually haunted because some sort of apparition or ghost keeps rocking up and actually scaring everybody. And that's the trick here, you actually need to be at the cemetery at night for this secret to work, because after reading the note and turning around, this ghost is going to rock up and he's going to point you in the direction of a tombstone within the cemetery. Once arriving at that tombstone, you'll read a note from his wife stating that she actually wants to move on from their son's death, and she'll do so at Casiodero, which is a location that then actually appears on your map. Once you do arrive here, you'll notice some sort of ritualistic path leading into some sort of mining shaft. Before looking down though, a note has actually been left by the man on the plank who apologises for his acts as he couldn't stand his wife being so happy when he saw her after their son's death. If you knock away the planks and then abseil down to the bottom, the ghost apparition will reappear after you actually honour the idol, finalising their family story. Bit of a tragic tale, to be honest, there's no question about that, but a well-made Easter egg for sure. Now, you may or may have not noticed that there's a lot of QR codes all over this game, but they're primarily located on these crate boxes in camps and military bases throughout Yara. If you actually scan it with your actual phone in real life, it will take you to a website which plays this very ambiguous MP4 file. There is a lot of ideas floating around at the moment in terms of this either being referenced as a future Far Cry game or Battle Royale Far Cry, which is very interesting stuff to say it mildly, but I think we're just going to have to wait and see what it turns out to be. There is another QR code though, and it's actually found on the collar of K9000, which you can actually obtain through the Ultimate Edition. And if you actually scan this code again, it will take you to a website where you'll have to solve this mini puzzle for some exclusive artwork to download. And this is actually a reference to Captain Laserhawk, which is an upcoming series produced by Ubisoft and Netflix together. And I've actually included all of the links directly to the MP3, the puzzle and the artwork down below in the description if you want to check it out yourself without having to actually scan everything in game. Now, we've got a small nod to the Watch Dogs franchise here, specifically DedSec, and back in the region of Madrugada, east of the Oasis Plains and close to that Bunker 2 Easter egg we spoke about earlier, if you actually hold left of that same building, you'll come across a note on top of some rubble. It's a type note which is from DedSec, and it's trying to recruit people from Yara via their Wi-Fi network. If you haven't played Watch Dogs, DedSec is the secret hacking collective which features prominently throughout the series, so it's a nice cheeky nod to them here. But speaking of electronics, there's another very obscure Easter egg hidden in the electrical generators distributed around Yara. This one here is located south of Videra, and if you actually walk up close to it, you'll hear some electronic static. And I'll just pop it up on the video now so you can actually hear it yourself. As you can hear, nothing out of the ordinary, but a big shout out to Infinite Spinergy here on Reddit for actually posting this. But the electrical sounds can actually be translated to Morse code, with the message stating Cameron Britton is the greatest sound designer of all time, which is fantastic because Cameron Britton is actually a senior sound designer at Tencent who actually formerly worked as an audio team lead at Ubisoft Toronto, working on the Far Cry, Splinter Cell and Assassin's Creed games. So what an absolute masterful maneuver here. Awesome stuff. Good work, Cameron. Now in it number 10, and that's more Far Cry game references here, because if you start the Yaran story quest, Seeds of Love from Lorenzo in El Este, you'll need to find 7 of his children. One of them is located here on the map, and when you do arrive at the farm, you'll notice there's a plant pot with the emblazoned emblem of Joseph Seed's Eden Gate Cult from Far Cry 5. When we do give the flower a sniff, we experience those familiar Bliss hallucinations where we actually end up following Lorenzo's daughter Riel, who dances through the jungle, and there's this uncanny resemblance to Faith from Far Cry 5 as well, with a lot of dialogue similar to that of the brainwashed people in the Seeds cult. So of course I think this is all intentional and a really good Easter egg and callback in my opinion. By the way folks, if you've enjoyed these Easter eggs so far or learned something new, a very swift like down below would genuinely help me out a lot. It'd be very kind of you, so thank you very much. Now in Far Cry you can actually collect roosters all around Yara to then use in this kind of Mortal Kombat-esque minigame, and speaking of Mortal Kombat, we've got a few of those Easter eggs here. If you head into Ubisoft Connect, you'll be able to redeem some roosters for free, and you can actually actually pick up Toasty, which notes in his description as inviting opponents to come closer, which is a nice reference to Scorpion's signature move in Mortal Kombat. And we've also got Frosty, which is a reference to Sub-Zero, who likes to strike his enemies cold. Apart from their description, their matching feather colours of their Mortal Kombat counterparts is a pretty cool Easter egg for me. But not only that, we've got two more here. We've got El Dragon, which is a potential reference to Ryu from Street Fighter with his Dragon Punch, and El Rival, who's described in-game as hoping to surpass his co-op mate El Dragon in strength one day, which is also a nice reference to Ken Masters and Ryu's rivalry. Not only that for Roosters though, because one of the Yaran stories you complete, called Spur of the Moment in Madrugada, gets you into a little bit of a pickle with some aggressive Roosters underground. At one point, Dani says that it's game over. Actually, I'm going to play the clip for you now.
I have to get out of here. If Roosters start coming out of the walls, it's game over, man.
Which is actually reference to Bill Paxton saying the very famous line, "It's game over, man," in the film Aliens, which I'm actually also going to play for you right now.
Game over, man. It's game over.
Which is really quite cool. It's another very subtle, small detail, but I appreciate it a lot. Now, there's huge amounts of customization options in Far Cry, which is fantastic, but one weapon in particular, the Desert Eagle handgun, nods to the very famous Atari 2600 video game console, which actually appeared in the late 1970s and sold like crazy because you could actually play Space Invaders on it. The livery of the console actually matches the Desert Eagle skin perfectly, and if you're wondering how to get your hands on the weapon itself, you'll need to complete the treasure hunt in Roja Bay, which is on the west coast of Esperanza, and it looks like Ubisoft have got quite a few Atari fans. Now, one of the great things about Far Cry is the music, and if you're actually driving along in your vehicle and you have music playing, Dani will actually sing along to it, which is great, and we've all been there ourselves, I'm sure. But not only that, if you actually head to the lighthouse at Corto Cay on the tutorial island, on the roof of the building there, you're going to find a note from Riri, who's actually written a love note to a guy called Dominic, and she's done so by utilising all the lyrics from Rihanna's hit single Umbrella, which is very smooth. Now, another couple cool Easter eggs here are the charms that you can actually attach to your weapons in the customization menu. You pick up this full metal jacket charm just by completing the initial storyline, and it's actually referenced to the famous film of the same name, with the description of the charm stating, "What is your major malfunction?" And that's actually a quote from the drill instructor Sergeant Hartman in the same film. And if you haven't seen that film, by the way, definitely do so. It's an absolute banger, and I'm going to put that clip on now.
What is your major malfunction, numbnuts?
Now, speaking of military films, we've actually got an iconic photo mode pose from the film Platoon here. You can actually see this by entering the photo mode option in-game and cycling across to it, as well as the Joseph Seed pose from Far Cry 5 and the Far Cry 3 pose from Vars. In fact, if you actually travel to this location on the map and head to the beach, you can knock off a bucket and then find a head in the sand underneath it. Further homage to the Far Cry 3 franchise there. And I actually tried to get a decent picture, but as you can see, the head just glitches out, but it's still cool nonetheless. And actually, while we're on the beach, if you do travel to this location just south of Cortina Peninsula, you're going to come across a woman preparing a barbecue on the beach itself, which is nothing out of the ordinary, but for some reason she thinks it may be better to actually just soak everything in petrol, and as you can see, it hasn't turned out too well, and I just had to squeeze this one in here because it is quite cool to see small details like this in the game, especially as 9 times out of 10 we just run straight past it. So if you have come across anything similar to this, let me know down below in the comments. Now, if you've played any Ubisoft games before, you'll know that they absolutely love unicorns. In fact, you've been able to actually ride unicorns as mounts across several of their different games, and Far Cry 6 is no different. To get this mount though, you'll actually need to start a treasure hunt called Suite 15 in El Este, which you can see here on the map, and once you do get there, you'll need to read a note on the outside of the building which kind of starts the treasure hunt. Once you've started, get yourself inside the building, and your job is essentially to go around and turn on all of the switches to get the power going, making sure you actually get to the roof, by the way, so you can shoot the lock off the door for the final switch. That took me way too long to figure out, but once that's done, head back downstairs to the ground floor, press the big green button, and you'll see El Unicorn in the garage, your very intimidating battle mount ready to take down Castillo's regime. Now, probably my favourite out of all of the Easter eggs so far, and that is a big reference to Indiana Jones and his adventures in tombs. In the town of Concepcion, located in the region of El Este, you start the treasure hunt called the Emerald Skull, and it is a fun treasure hunt where you actually progress through 2 tombs, picking up a fedora dashboard cosmetic for your vehicle, which is another nod to Indy's iconic hat, with a description even saying it belongs in a museum. But there's also a few notes laid about from Dr. Halfmain, which is also a reference to Dr. Alan Quatermain, who was a big famous game hunter and adventurer who was actually played by Sean Connery in the League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, which is a great Easter egg. And when you do get to the end of the treasure hunt, you don't get anything crazy, you get a nice charm, but it's still fun nonetheless. Now, in at number 1, and it's finishing the game before you actually play the game, and you've been able to do this on previous Far Cry games, and there is no change in Far Cry 6. When you actually finish the tutorial island, you'll be given a boat, and you'll be able able to either sail to the mainland or use it just to sail off into the distance. If you do choose the latter, you'll be met with a cutscene of Dani lounging on a beach in Miami, listening to news of the revolution that's been squashed by Castillo, which is pretty hardcore. However, if you did miss this opportunity the first time round and haven't yet completed the story in Far Cry, you can actually just pick up any aircraft and fly off the map and trigger the exact same cutscene. So the option is still there for you, but you just won't be able to do this if you've already completed the story, by the way. It just won't allow you to do it. In any case though, it's still a fun feature added to the game, and I'm sure we'll get the same Easter egg going forward in every Far Cry game to come. And if you did enjoy these Easter eggs, by the way, consider subscribing to the channel for more of them. I'm sure I'll be whipping up some more videos like this in the future. And I think that'll do it for me. I really do hope you enjoyed all of these. A very swift like down below if you haven't already would be greatly appreciated. And as usual, coffee's on me.